155. I think this is episode 155, August 8th, 2020, 9:57 a.m. I don't have the Rona. That's what I was talking about the last episode. Got tested twice now for work. I don't have it. So part of me is happy that I don't have it. Well, I mean, a lot of me is happy that I don't have it. But then the other part of me is like, I got my test yesterday, and I was like, I don't have the Rona. And I was like, yes. Then I was like, I still feel like dog shit, though. And I was like, I woke up today, and I was like, for some reason, like, expected that because I didn't have it, it was just, I'm no longer allowed to feel bad. And I woke up this morning and was like, oh, like, literally did like a Wolf of Wall Street, like, hour shower, like, steam shower. It was just, like, draining my face. But, yeah.
I think people forget you can still get sick and not have corona. Right?
Yeah.
There are a shitload of other illnesses that we've had our whole lives that make you feel bad, and you can still get those.
Yeah, I think that physician that Rogan had an epidemiologist on, or like a virologist or someone, right when corona was getting going, and the guy was super brilliant guy, super just apolitical, intelligent, was just very soft spoken, but he goes, people forget that none of the other diseases. It's my alarm. None of the other diseases went on vacation.
Time for a podcast.
Yeah. Fuck you. None of the other diseases went on vacation. He was like pneumonia. Exactly right. He's like they didn't just like corona came in and they bumped fists and tapped out. They're like, all right, bud, you got this round. Like everything else is still going. Everything else is still going. And
one of the guys at work had strep throat this week. They all thought he had coronavirus.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, my entire throat is full of white shit. It's, usually what you get when you have strep throat. Why don't we test for that?
Yeah. Not to know, man. Corona. Put him up against
throat.
the wall. Like, all right, bud.
Great.
Sorry.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
anyway.
On that happy note, Colonel Tyler Morton, PhD, author of From Kites to Cold War. So, woo! Oh, nice.
I brought a copy this time.
Nice. I'll bring out my Kindle copy. Can I be part of the club? Can I? I want to.
I don't know. Can you?
Ah, damn it. Well, it's.
Oh yeah, you can totally see that.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Wait. There we go. It's you can kind of. There we go.
Yeah.
So we got into it last time, but. So, I don't know, let's just pick a random spot and keep going. One of the first things I thought that was kind of funny was, relatively, I like to think I'm a fan of Clarence Kelly Johnson. Just, the little bit I do know as a biology major. But, skunk works, he's fucking crazy, he used to drink...
He's famous, right?
What?
He's famous.
Oh, dude, In Skunk Works by Ben Rich, they actually talk about how he was with some Navy guys at some Air Force base, and they were just getting lit up one night till like 2 a.m, drinking a bottle of White Horse. I just remember that name. And he bet him. He's like, when is the Navy gonna purchase a U-2? And they're like, Clarence, like, you fat old hog, like, you can't take a U-2 off from like one of our carriers. And so literally at like 2 a.m, he went out and like had some of the airmen like flip the lights on the runway, and they paced it out. And in my mind, I just have this like image of just like these drunk as fuck guys with a Kelly Johnson. They're just going foot to heel to toe. But they walked it out.
How long is it?
Well, they walked it out, and they walked out the length of whatever carriers these guys were operating, and they found out that they could take a U-2 off from there, and that's what opened the door to like Navy sales. So I thought that was kind of funny. But on that note, in your book, it talks about how when they were looking for what would become the U-2, is they had all these entry or these contract bids between 3 different companies. But then you said, I don't know why I was trying to explain this to you. I'm like, wait, you wrote the book. But then there was another bid from someone that an unsolicited bid, and it was like it wasn't a Clarence, but it was one of the guys from Lockheed, and apparently there's some I guess red hot guy named Clarence, and he said he can do it better. But I don't know why. That doesn't really have anything to do with the Korean War, what we were going to talk about. But that made me laugh out loud. It was just like, unsolicited, and I was like, as soon as it said unsolicited, I was like, I bet it's going to be Clarence Johnson. And they're like, it's from a small company called Lockheed, like back when it was like Lockheed Marietta. I was like, I knew it. It was just unsolicited. But
it's kind of cool you could do that back in the day, right? Just, they put out, I mean, they still sort of do, but there's like, not independent companies that can pull off a multi-billion-dollar project these days. Right? But back then, they're like, Lockheed was, I mean, they had obviously established themselves by that point, but not in the airborne ISR kind of business. Lockheed or Morton or Johnston was just a genius. With design, and they already had the engine that he knew could, meet the requirements. And it's funny that, if you carry that thread forward, we can talk about it some other time. But I think it's hilarious that once they get the airplane and it's it's established that it's going to kick ass, they go talk to Curtis LeMay, and he's like, "Fuck that! I'll just use the B-36. I don't need your thing. Get out of my office."
Yes, dude.
That whole story of them, flying out to Omaha to Strategic Air Command to brief the cigar chomping Curtis LeMay. And he literally throws him out of his office.
He's just get the fuck out. He's just
basically, right? Like, I don't need that. I got the B-36, which if you're familiar with that thing, that's just a massive,
monster. Monster. 6 burning or 4 burning, 6 turning.
Slow. Eventually they put some jet engines on one side to make it a little bit faster. But that thing's just huge. Chugging along, taking pictures. The RB-3060.
Can
LeMay's like, nah, I don't need the U2. I got this thing.
I got whatever I want. You're gonna hate me. Can you take out your AirPods? It's coming through muffled. It's not you. It's my shitty connection.
Let me kill it.
No, you're fine. I apologize. There we go. Yeah, no, you're good. I still don't have it down to a science. You'd think that it's for some people, they put in AirPods and it comes through crystal clear, like right next to my ear. Other people put it in headphones and it sounds like they're talking through water. That's my bad. But was it LeMay that? Was it LeMay that flew out to Skunk Works, I think? And I think I thought he flew out and had them brief him on what was, I think at the time, the A-12, but would come to be the SR-71. And Ben Rich talks about it, and he says he comes out and he's almost in like the pure ego LeMay that we know and love. He almost like didn't want anyone to know he was there. It was like seeking help from people, but he like didn't want anyone to know. And he asked for and he was like, you know what, give me 10 of them. Give me 10 like for the Air Force instead of just the CIA, because LeMay fucking hated the CIA. And apparently Ben Rich goes, would you like, because they were putting on air-to-air missiles, like look down, shoot down, like years before anyone else. And they also even had plans for a 2,000-pound kinetic bomb. So just like, not even a JDAM, but just, I guess, I don't know, from 85,000 feet in Mach 3, that thing packed a punch.
Yeah, dumb bomb, just drop it.
Yeah.
Try to do the math on that target.
Yeah, I know.
Land.
yeah, I know. I mean, fuck, I guess if anyone could figure it out, it'd be Skunk Works boys. But they go, what about the bombers? And he goes, what about them? And he goes, would you like to order some of those? Apparently LeMay turned and he goes, we haven't ordered those yet? And was just like, just completely dumbfounded. But yeah, so, and you got to guide me on this, so you're the expert. So I'm just trying to throw out everything I remember. I was going to say, the other thing I love is you got to love that just like American, I don't think it was necessarily Eisenhower. I wrote down the name. Was it Leghorn? But it was the idea that it's like, so we can't like, because they did what was the Korean War strategy for ISR? They said you said in your book, you'd have someone go and almost distract them and then scream towards the border while the other ones took pictures.
Yeah, there was a lot of that going on. They would, that was more Vietnam, where they were hiding ISR, in the F-86 packages, and some of them would be ISR airplanes, and they kind of all go out, and then the ones who weren't were kind of decoys, and they'd peel off to take the MiGs with them.
Yeah.
And the other guys would go up into China and take pictures and stuff up there. Yeah. This Wild Wild West, man.
It really was, though. That's the imagery I'm getting from it. It's just sort of like, fuck it, do it live, almost. Just like,
yeah, right.
All right, like you like go time, like, right? It's, it was they're like, well, we can't, like, they're gonna shoot us down, but we still need to get this, so we're gonna build the U-2. And then even then, after Francis Gary Powers, I love, again, even like the backdoor like briefings were like, so we can't keep flying over them because they're gonna shoot us down. And everyone was, I concur. Then it was, but we still need the ISR, and it was, I concur. So we're gonna say we're gonna stop doing it, but how much higher and faster do you think we can go? Like, you think we can do it? I think we can do it. Fuck it, let's do it. And that's what birthed the SR-71. But yeah, the B-36 equipped with cameras that's insane.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing started. So in the you're familiar with the Berlin airlift, right?
Yes.
So they had all these corridors going into Berlin, and you had to stay in those corridors.
Yes.
If you flew out of them, it would shoot you down or whatever.
Yeah.
That was the idea. So they're like, hey, we got, we can take supplies into Berlin where the U.S. stuff is. So let's take some of those airplanes that are authorized,
and
put some cameras on them, right? So we can do some. Because you got to remember, back then they didn't know shit about Germany. I mean, they didn't have any good images of the stuff where the Soviets would come in if there was going to be a war. They were pretty blind.
That's pre-Corona.
Despite having fought a war not too much before that and bombing the shit out of the place, they still didn't really know. They didn't have good intel on where things were and where they would need to attack and all that kind of stuff. So they were trying to get anything they could, any way they could. So they started putting cameras on all those transport aircraft, as many of them as they could, and the B-36 was one of them. That thing had a massive camera on it. Yeah,
was that the one that had the 20-foot?
20-foot thing. That ended up being on the C-97.
Okay, yeah. The one that took pictures of New York.
Had some other big, huge cameras on it. They're just, trying to conceal them with,
right. Yeah, literally. It's just
fuselage. And,
Nope, it's just grain and flax. Don't look here. Meanwhile, you got like a whole like Kodak team back there. like, all right, do we got it? And he said took pictures of people in Central Park from 70 miles away. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, put it in the corridors flying into Berlin.
That way they could look as far into East Germany as they could to try to see, what the heck was out
there. It is, because there's a great little like blip on the Berlin airlift in Richard Rhodes' Dark Sun, a book about the hydrogen bomb. Oddly enough, there's just a chapter on the Berlin airlift, but they talk about going in there, and it was just like. Yeah, I mean, we never left the planes because we were scared we were gonna get shot. And they're like, we come in really foggy days, and there was an apartment right at the end of the runway, and it was kind of the running joke who's gonna take out like the top floors of the apartment. They're like, luckily no one ever did, but they're like, there are a couple times where you'd be coming in like just beneath the clouds, and said you'd feel your butt kind of close up because you're like, there's like the HVAC system, just like banking right over it, like. Okay. But
Germany, I don't know if you've ever been there, but Germany in the wintertime, that's no fun. I mean, it's always cloudy.
That's like Maine and New Hampshire. Fuck that.
It's not ideal for flying and,
Yeah. But I have to when listening to your book, I have to put myself back in that mindset. Because it was, what was that operation where here's a plan to map the entire surface area of Eastern Europe and parts of the Soviet Union, and it's like, oh yeah, this is prior to like Corona and keyhole satellites. Like this, we didn't have this shit. Like, it's very easy for me to fall back into this like, literally growing up with Google. I need to stop saying literally. Growing up with Google Earth on my phone, like.
Yeah, we forget. Right?
That is.
Remember so the Air Force, drops these atomic bombs on Japan, right? And that becomes the strategy. That's how you're going to win a war.
Yeah.
So after World War II's over, they tell the Air Force, okay, so you got it. Make sure you can bomb Russia and save us all.
Figure it out. You guys got it. Yeah.
Sorry, it's F-22 fly on Saturday day here on Langley. So
that sounds awesome.
There'll be F-22s flying over, but
the
Air Force has no idea what to target.
Yeah.
Nothing, right? And that's why they were trying to get They're interviewing dudes who left Russia. They're interviewing German scientists. They're just trying to get any targeting information they can because they have no idea what's actually in Russia, in the Soviet Union.
No, it is.
Go save us. Nuke the hell out of the Russians.
Yeah.
But have fun figuring out what to target, right? So that's really what prompts all of this imagery stuff.
Yeah. We can also see how that leads into like stockpiling. What do we have to hit? Well, accuracy through volume. If we just hit everything, all right, build 70,000 weapons, go. I remember watching this video a couple of years ago, and it was this guy gentleman that's since passed away, but he was on B-36s in Korea and I guess before and after. But he's walking this like interviewer through it. I'll send you the video if I can find it. I can find it. I'll send it to you. But he's just an old dude, and he's like walking through the B-36. It might have been the one that he used to be on, but it's at like some museum now. And he's telling stories about everything. And he's like, yeah, one time he's like, I remember like they put cameras on it instead of like bombs. And LeMay told us that we were going on like our squadron that we were going on like we're going to be doing like a simulation near Russia. Or Soviet Union. He's like, and we get close to it, and then we're supposed to be going like west, and we start going east. He's like, and I asked the pilot, I was like, why are we going east? And he's like, we're not. He's like, so I just nodded my head and was like, okay, we're not. And he goes, it was a little eerie because we turned off all the radio equipment. And it's just like, he's like, so that's when I realized that we were going a couple 100 miles into the Soviet Union. But he's talking about it, I'm like, okay, that's badass. He goes, yeah, so we were way up there. And the guy goes, how high up there? And he goes, we were at 63,000 feet. And that always stuck out to me.
Probably not.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Is that a fishtail? Is that an old guy maybe remembering it a little? Not that it's not insane and not trying to like shit on him, but
that's what I would expect. I don't think they could go that high.
It's pretty high.
He's probably up there pretty high.
Pretty up there, but yeah, probably not that high. I mean, like, how high was he? Was he Willie Nelson high, or was he 63,000 feet? And it's
right.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that doesn't like skew your memory a bit. Like you're in the Soviet Union on a hair trigger where nukes could go off. Probably skews your memory a bit, but that's just such like a badass imagery of like equipping this shit with cameras going in. Just so we can peek left and right. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, they had no choice, really.
Yeah. Wild West.
Such a big country, and everything all over the place. They could, they try. You read the book. They tried, as much as they could, because nobody actually wanted to fly over the Soviet Union. No. I mean, that was, when Eisenhower finally. I guess Truman did before that, but when they finally decide, okay, we're gonna fly over Kamchatka or we're gonna peek over whatever, those are rough decisions for the president. He didn't want to do that at all because he knew, all of them knew what would happen in 1960 when Powers gets shot down. It all comes to fruition. Here's what happens when you get shot down over somebody's country.
Yeah.
Right. There had been shoot downs along the way, which you read about. Most of those were over water.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I don't know how loud it is to you.
Yeah, I can hear it perfect. That's awesome. But yeah, that's why they wanted it to be the CIA, right? Is so that it wouldn't be military.
That was Eisenhower's thing, right? He's like, okay, we got the U-2. You guys have told me it can't be shot down. This is 56.
Yeah.
Right, 1956. You guys have told me it can't be shot down, which it didn't for 4 years. Right. But I don't want this to be a United States Air Force thing.
Yeah.
We need to have some kind of cover.
Yeah.
So they come up with the weather thing and
all that. But yeah, those presidents, they labored over that decision to actually send guys over Russia. We're pretty sure that some dudes had been doing it before anyway, just because, kind of like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
How could you fly over the Arctic, back in 1948?
Yeah, Admiral Byrd.
No GPS.
Yeah.
And not stray into somebody else's territory.
Yeah.
There's just no chance.
Yeah.
Right? Again, but just think about that. They didn't have GPS in their airplanes either. Let alone Google Maps, right?
They just had a little pack of amphetamines and like some water and like a piss tube.
They're navigating by stars, or and that you read that in 47 when they first started doing that mapping of the Arctic, they didn't know what was up there. They had no idea. Okay, we're gonna, we feel like the Soviets probably are putting radars along the Arctic to watch for our bombers and stuff. We don't know.
Yeah,
they're just flying, looking for anything.
Yeah,
that's a massive territory up there.
Yeah, there's insane shit. It's from one of James Bamford's books. He has several good books on the NSA, but he talks about these hidden histories that like neither side could ever acknowledge, but they still happened. Yeah. But one of them was like the Soviets had their listening posts way up there. The U.S., I believe we still have one in Alert Nunavut, but we had them way up there to the point where like we would, and it sounds like the old guy saying I was 63,000 feet up. It sounds like this story, but I mean this is in this like New York Times best-selling book. This guy was like, we had these NSA bases up there, and there were times where, I mean, it sounds like some Indiana Jones shit, but where like it was getting warmer in the spring and we were on like the outskirts of, I guess, like the ice caps. So, the parts that would break off and then, freeze up again as the seasons came and went. But they started to split apart where we had like our posts, like our listening posts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so like, it was like, and it sounds cheesy. It sounds cheesy, but it was like, these guys were like, I remember we were grabbing like all the magnetic tape and like throwing them across like the breaks in the ice, and we finally got
on an iceberg or something.
Yeah, and we finally got to the biggest spot, and that's where the plane could pick us up. But it's like, meanwhile, they would be watching like the Soviets do that too, and like neither side was gonna help each other. So you'd see like guys fall into the water, and it was like fuck you, and like it's just insane shit. But yeah, it's it's insane. But yeah, because that's another thing that I remember when I first learned that. Maybe it was like high school. I remember reading about it, but I never thought about that. It was like, oh no, if there's like a nuclear war, like everything's coming over the pole.
Yeah,
like it's just shortest distance. Like
right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's
our view of maps, is skewed by looking at them flat.
Yes.
Right?
Well, the Earth is flat, Tyler, and if you don't agree with that, then I'll end this podcast right now.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good. Hey, right. Not everyone's as smart as us flat earthers. Yeah, but
we look at straight lines on maps. And, unless you look at the globe, right? You're never flying in straight lines. Everything was and still would, right?
Yeah.
We still have B-52s.
Yeah, that's insane.
They still have Tu-95s. I mean, those are Cold War era bombers that still have kind of
the Soviet equivalent.
You think the same missions, right?
Yeah.
Go drop some nukes on the other guy. In the event, there's a triad, right? So missiles in the ground and bombers.
Yeah.
It's been that way for 60, 70 years.
Yeah. I was just watching a thing the other day about the triad. I had like Casper Weinberger from the Reagan administration, and he's talking about the triad. And actually, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I got really into SDI over the weekend, or the past couple of days. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. SD, that's an insane thing for another episode, but a little upset when I looked and I was like, okay, well, I know Reagan's dead and I know I can't get him on the podcast, and I was like, maybe Casper Weinberger. Nope, he died in 2005. So
yeah,
but General James Abramson, the guy that was in charge of SDI, is still alive.
Is he?
Yeah, he's 87 years old, and he's actually the chairman of some company. He's still, I guess, active and just, yeah. So that's who I need to get. But, yeah. So
let's talk about Korea a little bit.
Yeah.
So think about where we'll stick with the Air Force because that's what I know and love the best, right? So think about where they are. We were just talking about what they were doing in 1948, right? So the Korean War starts in 1950. So, World War II is over in 45. Air Force is told, okay, we got atomic bombs now. That's how we're going to win wars. Figure out how to destroy the Soviets, if it comes to that. And people thought it was going to come to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's easy for us to look back on it and say, whatever.
Yeah.
That was never really going to happen. But those guys who lived it, they really thought that it was going to happen.
Most people, isn't like the majority of adults thought that they would die by a thermonuclear war.
Yeah. You've seen the video.
Yeah.
You've seen, they actually felt that was a threat, that it was going to happen. And it was. I mean, it was, it was there. So the Air Force, 1947, when it, finally breaks away from the Army, to 1950, at least in the Airborne ISR business, which where I'll keep my expertise, they're just trying to figure out what to target in Russia.
Yeah.
What can we bomb with nukes if we have to go to war with Russia, right? And then this little problem starts in Korea, out of nowhere. So you got a very nascent airborne SIGINT capability, and that when I say nascent, I mean basically what they did in World War II.
Yeah.
Take a radio with you, get on the airplane, listen, hear what you could hear. I mean, it developed a little bit, but it was still, it still wasn't anywhere near what we ended up doing. So Korean War starts, and the Air Force sucks. I mean, let's be fair.
Yeah.
Right? And NSA, I mean, at the time, they were called the Armed Forces Security Agency. I think they were still AFSA back then. Yeah, they were. NSA's predecessor. They had no Korean requirements. They had no Korean linguists. They had no, they just didn't have a Korean capability. No dictionaries, nothing. Right? So, and that's a theme we kind of talked about in that first podcast we did, is we're never ready.
Yeah.
Teams on the intel side, we're never actually ready for, the conflict that we get.
Yeah.
Right? So they're all focused on Soviet Union, which rightfully so at the time, but when the Korean War starts, they got nothing. There's a very small imagery capability in the Pacific Air Forces, but as far as airborne SIGINT goes, and the ability to find targets on the ground, to either attack or to tell bombers to go get it, or to tell the guys on the ground, that's where the bad guys are, that kind of stuff. They are in terrible shape when the Korean War starts. So the Air Force has to flex. It's got to Truman tells them, okay, this is the full effort, let's go, right? And I think that story of how they go from what I just described, which was basically nothing,
mm-hmm.
to the end of the war, where they're I wouldn't call it a robust capability, but the end of the war, where we have tons of airborne ISR imagery airplanes in the business. They bring this guy in named Pop Polifka, who was a World War II airborne imagery guy. They bring him in. He's a wizard. I mean, he's a great leader. He's an organizer. For a lot of, if there's any Air Force officers listening, our big auditorium at Squadron Officer School, where we all go for our first, kind of captain level professional military education, is named after Pop Polifka. It's Polifka Auditorium. Everybody goes to it. We call it the Big Blue Room, where everybody goes to sleep when people are lecturing. But most people don't know, what he was. He was an airborne imagery guy, and he leads that airborne imagery effort in Korea. Stands up all these squadrons, figures out how to get the requirements, the targeting requirements, the imagery requirements from the guys in the field and the various people out there that need to have imagery, and then develops this, pretty good system of prioritization, figuring out what the most important targets are. Because just like today, there's always more requirements than there are capability.
Sure.
And somebody's got to figure out, okay, what are the prioritizations of these targets, and POP, figures that out and comes up with a pretty good system. And I would tell you it's pretty similar to what we do today, where you rack and stack the requirements and figure out what you're going to image. And then he develops, a way to get the images to the customers, which, we're talking 1951, so you're not sending them over the internet.
Yeah.
Right. So he sets up a pretty good system of couriers and, ways to get the images out to the guys in the field and stuff, which, that's pretty remarkable. If you think about what they start with in 1950 and what they end up with at the end, it's, that's a pretty interesting story when it comes to the imagery capability that they develop.
He's kind of like, he's like the ISR LeMay. Because if you ever read about like LeMay's, like, again, we know, cigar Trump and LeMay, get the fuck out of my office. But like, have you ever read about like when LeMay took over SAC? He goes in there and he's like, nothing was combat ready. Apparently he went in and was like, let me see like your bombing records, and they're like, or your bombing numbers, and they're like, oh, we're perfect, we're hitting everything 100%.
Yeah.
But he found out they were doing it from like 1,500 feet. Not 35,000, and
right.
It's like, and they were just doing like barges out in the ocean, where it's, everything else is blue, and then there's one black target, and it's like, just hit that.
Yeah, and they would take off from, let's just say Omaha and fly out to western Nebraska, hit a target, and come back.
Yeah.
Right, and LeMay's like,
that's not war. That's not war.
You take off from Omaha and you're going to go hit a target in Russia.
Yeah, yeah.
You're talking like a 24-hour sortie.
Yeah, yeah. And they're like, oh, numbers are 100. And he was like, I don't believe you at all. And so yeah, that's when they started doing all the faux bombings of American cities. And side note, did you know that apparently Baltimore and San Francisco are the most similar at the time to Soviet cities in terms of layout?
Yeah.
I guess there was a difference. I don't know where that would stem from. It doesn't seem like it would be climate, because San Francisco, but like apparently the layouts of Baltimore and San Francisco were the most similar to USSR cities.
Interesting.
And so we simulated bombed the fuck out of those. But fun fact. But he goes in there, and apparently he went through I don't know what the correct terminology is, I guess base to base. He just from the bottom up and just worked through them all and turned it into this lean, mean fighting machine, and then went over and kind of, I guess, broke some international laws, but with the agreements of like France, but went in and put in all these, he had like rings of bases to hold back if the Soviets decided to just bulldoze Europe. But he went in there and it was all not officially legal. So in pure LeMay fashion, he sends over his like good old boys, but they go over and they're just in civilian clothes. They get trains and stuff, and it's all these American soldiers, but they're just in like flannel and jeans, and they set up all these like secret air bases. Point of me saying that though is he went through and took this almost non-existent capability and set up the supply lines and did it all. Really wasn't supposed to be doing it, but he did it all from the ground up. That's it. You're mirroring it again with the ISR though. You go in and it's like, what do we have? And it's like, I don't know, we got some like Kodaks. Like, no, when you go up and how do we get it to the customer? Same thing. Well, it's not enough that you take the pictures, because you can get the best picture in the world, and you can get it crisp, and you can get it, but it doesn't matter if it's sitting in the airplane, if it's not live, you can't pause time. So it kind of sounds like a lesser, admittedly to me, a lesser known but equally important kind of LeMay. It mirrors, I don't know if I'm getting my point across. It mirrors the same setup, picking it up from the bottom, building it through, building the backbone of it, and really bringing it up from the ground.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, those opportunities are rare.
Mm-hmm.
Even through the history of the Air Force, there aren't that many times where these things happen.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like you described, where it's you have nothing and you have a requirement now. It's usually because it's forced on you, right? Whether that's
voluntold,
because you got to, you know, conduct nuclear war.
Yeah.
You know, or in this case, it's because, you know, we're part of the United Nations and we're going to support South Korea in the Korean War. Yeah, Pop Polivka, he's one of those guys, you know, and I'll tell any historian who wants to hear it, you know, we have, you know, the Air Force is fascinated with certain figures, right? We love our Hap Arnolds and our Billy Mitchells and, you know, that kind of stuff. But there are guys who are, you know, underappreciated, like these guys, like Polivka is just one that comes to mind. You know, I think I talked about Benny Foulet in the first one. You know, guys who were incredibly instrumental in the success of the Air Force. Remember, I mean, 1950, we're still, you know, the Air Force is 2 years old.
Yeah.
You know, right? You know, of course, we've been flying for a long time.
Yeah, but that was Army.
Our way out.
Yeah.
But, you know, as a service, it's not really established, and there's still plenty of people, especially in the Army, who want to just get rid of it and take it all back. There's still people today that want to get rid of it and take it all back.
I was going to say, for anyone listening, we were talking about earlier having to put ourselves in the mindset of back then. Air Force is 47, so this is 50. I mean, they're basically like Space Force in a way. I mean, Space Force is what, maybe a year? Not even. Yeah. It's pretty much this, and it's branching out from a previous thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. So we look at it now and we're like, Air Force. We're like the fucking Air Force, you know. But it's 2020. It's been 73 years.
Right.
It's, you know, it's so sorry. Yeah, I cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah, let it go. We got it. We're independent. We're not going back to the Army.
Yeah.
But the point is, they're still trying to establish themselves, and not once and for all, but to continue to build their credibility, right? So they were very successful in 1948 in the Berlin airlift, which is really the first, you know, United States Air Force operation. And that's LeMay, right? LeMay's in charge of safety, you know, U.S. Air Forces in Europe during the Berlin airlift. So that's kind of his. You know, there's a lot of guys who made it happen, but he was the boss, so he gets credit for that, right? You know, here 2 years later, now they're in a shooting war, and they got to figure out how to be a credible part of the joint fight.
Yeah.
You know, they got Marines, they got Army, they got Navy. You know, it's a combined effort, and guys like Pop Polivka make it. You know, give the Air Force the credibility that it needs and makes it successful. I think a lot of times we underappreciate these guys because they're just not household names.
Yeah.
I have a list of Air Force guys who need biographies written on them.
That's what you need to do.
And whether it's a whole book or just an article or, you know, that kind of stuff, but Pop's on the list.
Yeah.
There's, you know, if you go Google Pop Polivka, you'll get a Wikipedia entry, you know, you'll get some references in books like mine or whatever. But the actual story of that guy, you know, and remember, he's a World War II hero.
Yeah.
He's an airborne guy in World War II, takes, you know, tons of pictures, does a whole lot of stuff, you know, but there's not even an article that I'm aware of that lays out his life and what he actually did for the Air Force. So, sorry, soapbox kind of thing.
No. I'd never.
The point is, there's
literally never heard of
guys throughout, you know, the history, not just the Air Force. I'm sure every service has them, you know, that needs some attention, and that's kind of why I focused on Polivka with Korea, you know, in the book, because I wanted more people to know about the story, especially Air Force officers who every one of us go sit in his auditorium and take naps. You know, how many of us actually thought, who the hell is this named after?
Yeah.
Because Polivka is a weird name, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's not Smith Hall or something.
Yeah, it's not, you know, not Roosevelt or Vanderbilt.
You know, it's not Mitchell Hall, or, you know, somebody thought this guy was worthy enough to name, you know, the auditorium where every single Air Force officer goes to squadron officer school. They named their auditorium after him, and that's important. But you can't find a good, you know, history of who he actually was. So anyway,
no, I mean, I was going to say it's not a soapbox thing because, again, someone with a biology major, but I'd like to think I know some stuff about the Air Force or the history. I had never even heard of his name before you.
Of course not. Yeah.
So it's not even like I heard it, but I was like, I'm not that well versed on it. I had never heard the name before, man. So no, it's absolutely that's I don't think that's a soapbox at all, or it is a soapbox, but it's a fucking justified one.
Yeah, it's good. So there's just guys that we need to there's history that's out there that hasn't been fully explored yet, really, and Polifka is one of those guys that we probably need to pull the string a little bit farther, and get it out there so everybody knows the story.
And well, it's also what he did. I mean, think about the importance of ISR. Let's use an example: the Bison bombers, where we thought there was the bomber gap, right? Because the Soviets flew the same ones over their city in pure Soviet magic, and just they have 10,000 of them, and then we go and find out they don't. But that's the value of surveillance is. Oh, we see that they don't actually have these, and like you said in your book, it, quote, gives the Eisenhower administration some breathing room. Back to what you were saying earlier. Hey, Air Force, you're going to bomb. This is how we ended a war, A-bomb. So what you're going to do is just gear up with A-bombs and take it out of Soviet Union and, what do we say, accuracy through volume. So to tie that all in is, Truman actually wrote in his journal that he believed that the Korean War were the first shots of World War III. It was either he said that or his daughter said that his dad said that. Regardless. So to tie all that shit in together is, this guy created the capability to see farther in, literally and figuratively, and to sort of offset that. You see the Bison bombers, you realize, there isn't a bomber gap. It's the same thing. If you enhance their intelligence gathering capabilities, I think you can make the argument that not postponed because it didn't happen, but prevented an all-out thermonuclear exchange. I know I'm kind of scatterbrained if I'm making that point, but
no, quite possibly, right? You're 1957, right? 56. I can't remember when the first U-2 flight over the Soviet Union was. I think it was 56. It might have been 57, but July 4th, 56. There's a full-on arms race going on.
Yeah.
At the time, right? We had a few years after the war where the Soviets didn't have the bomb, right? And then they got it, and then everything started escalating. I don't know if you've watched some of the crazy videos from the hydrogen bomb experiments and all that kind of stuff.
Fuck yes, I
have. If you haven't seen those, get on YouTube and look at some of those big hydrogen bombs.
Those ain't A-bombs.
No, man. So things are ratcheting up incredibly, right? And the United States economy is doing great after the war. We all know that, but we're still spending way more money than guys like Eisenhower want to spend on national defense. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that he won the war and he's a retired 4-star general, he still understands that there's more to the economy than just defense and stuff.
Yeah.
So putting the U-2 over the Soviet Union when they did, just like you said, let's go fly over these airfields and see what they actually have. It slows everything down for us because we know that we're not losing. We know that the Soviets aren't just outdistancing us, outpacing us with all these things. It does. It buys them time. It gives them that strategic advantage, to just kind of chill out, figure out how we're going to move forward. And the Soviets don't have that.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know any stories of Soviet ISR aircraft overflying Kansas, right?
I was going to say that earlier. There's no Soviet SR-71 stories, right?
Yeah, they had ISR aircraft, but the glory of the United States during that time, during the entire Cold War, that ability to put
impunity,
to put an airborne ISR platform off of somebody's coast, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Nobody else could do that.
That's the definition of big dick energy.
Yeah.
You're right. There's no story. There's not no story. There's just no historical objective basis for Soviet overflight.
They don't get overflight until the Open Skies Treaty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're able to actually do it legally, right?
Yeah.
Satellites, of course.
Yeah.
When that all started happening. But, for an airborne ISR guy and historian, the ability of the United States to do that starting in 1947, right? I mean, we start doing that in the Baltics, in 1947, spying on the Soviet Union. And we do it. We're able to do it today, and we're still the only country that can do it.
Yeah.
Lots of countries have airborne ISR.
Yeah.
Lots of them, right? But you can take an RC-135, fly it out of Omaha right now, and be just about anywhere around the globe, and put an airborne ISR sensor off of somebody's coast.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Yeah.
And there are very few countries who can do that. We can name them on one hand.
Yeah.
We can probably name them on two fingers, and the other one's an ally of ours who flies the same airplane.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's just that ability gave us that leg up throughout all of this stuff, all the things that we talk about in the book. The ability of the United States to just, whether they flew, from CONUS, or whether they, all the bases that we were talking about that you established, your Milton Halls, your Tadinas, all those places, where you can fly an airplane and be off somebody's coast.
Yeah.
And that is a unique capability that nobody else had. And sometimes, one of my old bosses, Joe Santucci, he wrote a dissertation on the political use of airborne ISR. And, his whole thesis is oftentimes the point of flying the airplane wasn't really even to gather intelligence. It was to make a political statement that we're watching, one, and we can do this too, right?
Okay.
But we can, we see what you're doing over there, whoever, fill in your block for whatever country you want. And we're going to fly an airplane over there to show you. Just to be the first one on scene, to fly off your coast, Libya, and make you notice that we're paying attention. And of course we're collecting intelligence the whole time. But his thesis, and I think he proves it pretty well, is that, sometimes the intelligence gain isn't priority number one. It's more about making a political statement to whomever you're trying to influence, which I think is pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's like those shitty little bombs that they would throw out of Zeppelins in World War I. But it wasn't necessarily that these things did much. I'm sure they probably racked up a couple kills just by chance, but it was more so, hey, you're in your hometown, far away from all of human history. The war has always been, quote, over there, and now we're above you.
Yeah.
It's the psychological. There's, again, maybe you threw a couple grenades and got a couple unlucky fuckers, but it's the psychological message. We're here.
Yeah. Think about the fear that the Zeppelins over the UK in 1914 fired. I mean, they were freaking out, panicking. And that's exactly what it was. Was the military gain really going to be that big?
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean,
it's sowing fear and doubt into the population that, maybe my country can't take care of me, and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. I was going to say the psychological impact of LeMay's bombing raids over the Japanese mainland. But then I realized I was going to say there is psychological impact to that, but it's also, those weren't little hand grenades out of Zeppelins. That was full on fire bombings. So maybe not the same, but
maybe not the same.
Maybe not the, psychological. No, it might have been the literal incineration of the city that did it.
It's always fun to think about. LeMay had firebombed, over half, some say 70% of Tokyo, had burned it to the ground.
Yeah.
And killed way more people than the atomic bombs ever did.
No, LeMay was worried about being tried as a war criminal if we lost.
Yeah. It's always fun to wonder, if we hadn't used the bombs, how much more firebombing was Japan going to take?
Well, I thought maybe this is just hearsay, but didn't we actually go through our entire supply of incendiary bombs?
I don't know.
I think that was part of it, was we didn't have any more. We could have, the American war effort, we could.
This is World War II. We could make some stuff.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, we could, that wasn't the problem, man. It was, we fucking, what you want, man, we got it. We got it yesterday. Yeah. We were doing Amazon. We were doing like Amazon same day delivery back in World War II. We went
with airplanes, tanks, and vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, dude, we went Big Mac on it. We went billions and billions served. It's I think it was Lockheed Martin. One of their plants was building a fighter jet every hour and 10 minutes. One of their plants, not the U.S. war effort. I said that in a past episode. I said the U.S. was building a plane every hour and 10 minutes. No,
one plant.
One of the plants was building hour and 10 minutes. But
I can't remember. I won't try to quote all the stats, but just think about the amount of equipment that we just scrapped. Basically the day after the war ended.
Oh yeah.
All the airplanes, the thousands and thousands of airplanes that we had, we just, left them, gave them away.
Yeah. Gave a lot to the Soviets.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
How much stuff we had. I mean, we had millions and millions of guys on active duty. We had almost 4 million people in the Army Air Corps.
Yeah. That's insane.
Here we are today. We have 370,000 or so, and it feels like we're a pretty, big service, right?
Yeah.
Air Force is pretty big. We have not even a tenth of what they had during the war.
That's insane. Yeah, that's rise to the occasion shit. Yeah, but it is the fuck. What was I gonna say? You were saying if we hadn't dropped the bombs. Well, wasn't that one of the worries? Was they actually Leslie Groves actually wanted LeMay to? I don't think he had the superiority to say that. I mean, he was in charge of the Manhattan Project, but he actually wanted or voiced his concerns that he wanted LeMay to hold off on some cities because they needed to see what an A-bomb would do to an untouched city. Because if you dropped it in an incinerated Tokyo, how do we know what really happened?
Yeah, I've heard that before. That they wanted to hit, pristine cities so they could see what the effects of it really were.
Yeah.
And then they picked a couple of them.
Yeah. And the most fucked up thing is the people in those cities. There were reports of they thought that they just weren't going to be touched for whatever reason. They thought they were being spared, and it's like, God damn, if there isn't more of a fattening up the sacrificial lamb. Whew. But
I think of the gravity of that decision and the situation that they were in, right? I mean, for Truman to pull the trigger, so to speak, on that decision, just the weight that the senior decision makers and usually the president has to make sometimes, just all the various factors, and Truman wasn't really he wasn't a warmonger by any stretch of the imagination. And for him to make that decision, you had to know that millions of American soldiers were going to die in the invasion of the mainland, right? I mean, that was, if history's right, if everything you read is right, that was the one thing that pushed him that way was, we're firebombing the bejesus out of these guys. They're not giving up. Killed more of them with firebombs than any of these bombs will kill them with anyway. They're not giving up. The only thing left for us to do, after we had taken Okinawa, was to invade the Japanese mainland, and the numbers are in the million, right? Over 1 million casualties on the U.S. side, and who knows how many on the Japanese side. So he's thinking about all the death that's going to happen. The Japanese don't surrender for the most part.
Yeah.
We saw that in Okinawa, guys just killing themselves, jumping off cliffs, even the
civilians jumping off cliffs. Yeah.
All the stuff that you saw, and just think about the weight of that decision that he had to make.
It's insane.
Factoring in all that kind of stuff.
It's insane. I mean, I always argue for the droppings of the A-bombs. I know a lot of people argue against it, and that's a great argument to make. It's but one thing I always point to is I feel like I almost don't have a choice because my dad's dad was getting ready to go be part of the mainland invasion. So I very much wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I mean, he might have survived, but I mean, come on, 18.
Yeah, who knows?
Go get him, kid. Here's some lucky strikes and say a prayer. Yeah. Fuck that.
Yeah. But I think you have to appreciate that Truman was also worried about the Japanese casualties.
He was. He absolutely was. He
knew there was going to be millions and millions of deaths on that side, not just the military on the U.S. military side. He knew it was just going to be.
Well, he said that leading up to the hydrogen bomb, when they were arguing, do we need the hydrogen bomb? When didn't we send a bunch of nukes over to Korea, but Truman kept the cores in the United States because he didn't want them to be armed. He didn't want some guy trying to make a name for himself to drop a nuke, MacArthur. But he said, when asked about this, and there's like an exact quote where he said, "You have to understand these aren't weapons of war." And they're like, how is this not a weapon of war? And he's like, these are weapons of extermination. He was like, you take out women and children. And another exact quote, not exact quote, but I know it's a quote from him, but I'm just not going to get it verbatim, is when asked why we didn't drop the third, because we dropped the first August 6th, 2 days ago, and then we dropped the second 75 years ago tomorrow. There's just 6, and then 7, 8, drop another on the 9th. We waited like 4 or 5 days before they surrendered. So logic would say, well, then why don't we wait 2 more days and drop a third? And apparently Truman said, I just couldn't stand the thought of all those kids. So like this wasn't LeMay. Like, LeMay, for better or worse, probably wanted it. That's a bold statement, but I mean, JFK said you don't want LeMay making the decisions, but you want LeMay leading the charge.
Yeah.
Truman was very much, being a World War I veteran, but he was very much like, this is, you got to understand what's going to happen. This wasn't wasn't a rah burn them all. This was, you got shitty outcome 1, shitty outcome 2.
Yeah.
Which pile of shit do you want to eat?
Yeah, and I think even LeMay is executing the mission that he was given.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it's very easy for me to have the luxury to say LeMay is a warmonger.
Yeah, to incredible efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He was very good at what he put in place.
I love LeMay. I don't want to misconstrue that. You're right. I mean, this argument, you could almost, roll your eyes at it. But I mean, really, it wasn't just save the projected 1 million casualties. I mean, how many Japanese were going to die? Like, how many were going to die? They were training kids to put bombs on their chest and roll under tanks.
Yeah.
They were handing out sharpened bamboo sticks once they didn't have any more guns. They were apparently they were rolling out 1800s cannons. They were going home alone on this. They were,
Yeah, it was going to be brutal. And then, it is worth noting that another factor was we needed to show the Soviets that we had
you can't pretend that wasn't part of it.
That was part of it.
That was.
There is no doubt that because by this time they know. The war's over. We're going to win. One way or another, we're going to win. We'd already beaten, the Europe war was over. We already know that the Soviets are going to be our adversary at this point. I mean, it's very clear to everybody.
Yeah.
There is no doubt that dropping those 2 bombs was part of that messaging campaign to those guys.
It was absolutely a flex. It was 100%.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you cool with doing 5 more minutes?
Yeah.
I can go as long as you want. I just don't want to keep you.
Let's do 5 more minutes.
Gucci. But yeah, dude, it's definitely weird to think about, because what would have happened if we hadn't dropped them? Would we have just burned through that whole? Was dropping them? Was it that there was a threshold that had to have been hit? And let's just say it's 300,000 deaths, and maybe after 300,000 more, they were going to stop, or was it the style of the death? And it's, I mean, the temporary creation of a star over a city. Could we have gone through and killed 10 million with bullets and they wouldn't have surrendered, versus 300,000 with the heat of a sun?
Yeah, just snap your fingers.
Yeah.
And I think we, because these are familiar to us, right? You got to put yourself back in their time when, there wasn't an A-bomb before August 6th, right? 1945.
Yeah.
So, can you imagine the feeling and the shock of that happening?
Yeah.
Just out of nowhere.
That's true. Yeah.
This thing exploded in the air and killed 300,000 people. It wiped out our entire city.
Yeah.
It's just
500-mile-an-hour shockwave. We've
been conditioned, right? Because these bombs have been part of our entire lives, and our parents' lives, whatever. It's it's just normal. I can get on YouTube right now, like I told you. Hey, let's go watch the Soviets demonstrate an H-bomb.
Joe
exploding in the atmosphere.
Yeah, Castle Bravo, Teapot. You can watch them all.
No big deal. We're used to it. But imagine being a guy in 1945, and this thing happens.
Yeah.
Even the most ardent supporter of the emperor.
Yeah, that's
this is different. This is not 100 B-29s flying over, dropping fire on us. I can feel that. That's it's in a bomb, it's fire.
Yeah.
Okay, it's terrible, but it's tangible, right? You know what that is.
Yeah.
What was this?
Yeah, this vaporized people.
Yeah.
This burned their shadows onto walls.
Right. This didn't start a fire, that I could start if I, am not cautious with my cigarette or something.
Yeah. This is the hand of God.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what was the hypocenter, 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. Or that's the air, not the blast itself. The blast itself is higher than the sun, but
yeah, and that's what it was so different. That it hadn't changed the calculus of the Japanese thinking.
Yeah, people jumping in the river to cool their burns, but the river was boiling.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think about the shock and awe. That is, I mean, what else do you use to end World War II? I mean, if World War II was occurring at a certain point, almost like you and I were saying, where you were just saying, we're conditioned for the nuke. At some point, you almost got to imagine there's some sort of conditioning in World War II. It's just understood that everyone's dying, whether it's Holocaust or D-Day or whatever.
And then
it's just part of it.
If you think about just the simple fact that the Japanese and Chinese had already been at war for a decade almost before World War II actually started.
Rape of Nanking.
The amount of death and mayhem that they had seen. It's just another thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just more people dying.
Yeah.
It's terrible to think about it that way, but it is. I mean, you're talking 40, 50 million people died in World War II.
Yeah.
When you factor in all the civilians and everything. I don't know the exact numbers, but I mean, I know it's up in those things.
I think the upper estimate.
Death is just a thing.
Yeah.
It's terrible, but it is, right?
Well, also,
how much bombing can you take?
Yeah.
How much invasion can you take? You can probably take it all.
Yeah.
Until there's nothing left to fight with.
I mean, think about the kamikazes, dude. These guys were heroes, though. They would go through this, training. They would get their names in the paper. They got these weird haircuts where they almost looked like monks. I don't know what the purpose of that was, but they got, robes. They got all the prettiest geisha women, so they got all the comfort women. They were heroes, and they went off, and their planes didn't have landing gear. They had explosives. They were locked in, no parachute. I mean, this is, and I mean, most of these guys are 16 to 20 years old. That's a fact I found out yesterday. I did not know that. But I mean, you got to think I can get it. Your country's being, destroyed by what you perceive to be an aggressor, the enemy, the evil Americans, and you're going to defend your homeland, which has been there for thousands of years. Of course, you're going to get jacked up and go, protect your nation, fly your colors. So you're fighting that mentality, though. How do you counteract that mentality?
And I think just think about the island hopping campaign with all the Japanese guys in the tunnels and the caves, and they had to burn them out. To get, to end it.
Yeah, and when you're finished,
that was going to happen, right? Okinawa was terrible. If you ever read about the Battle of Okinawa, spend some time.
Yeah, in Okinawa,
watch a documentary about it or something. I mean, it is awful.
That was
a microcosm of what mainland Japan was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, Iwo Jima, I can never say it. Peleliu. But that one was insane.
Yeah. We had been doing that, every few months having to do that stuff. And so there's no way you could ever believe that they were just going to surrender.
No, not at all.
No matter how devastating the air attacks were.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, we'll wrap this bitch up, but I mean, I think it serves to point even after. So let's wind the clocks back 75 years from right now. So now we're 2 days after the first A-bomb. So we dropped this thing that, oh my God, what is this? Rivers are boiling. They still haven't surrendered. It's been 48 hours. So
let's find out if they have more than one.
Yeah. Maybe they only have one. Maybe they're maybe they played their hand.
So they were still going to fight us, right?
Yeah. It's tomorrow, August 9th.
Hiroshima.
Boom.
They're still going to fight us.
Yeah. Second one. Okay. Now, from our mindset, we're like, we just got them with 2. And from their mindset, they're like, okay, they have more than 1. So we know that. But now a couple of days are still going by. Now you're at August 10th, 11th, 12th. I mean, I think the shock has to be equal. From not only from the Japanese side, what are these weapons? Can you imagine the American side? It's like, I can only imagine them like looking at each other like, are they still going? I mean, that's got to be some like Rocky shit, It's about how hard you can get hit and keep going. It's like, so I don't know how yet. After 2, they still didn't. Like, that's probably the most insane fact of World War II. Is after 2, they still held out for a couple days.
Yeah, well, because you had all of the hardcore, army guys wanting to fight. They're advising the emperor that we're going to fight until there's none of us left.
Some of them actually stormed the palace because they thought the emperor was getting weak.
No matter what weapons these guys come up with, we're going to fight to the very, very end, right? And, it takes the emperor just saying, I'm ordained by God. I'm making this decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was.
We're surrendering.
Yeah, I think it was Richard Rhodes that said it. It's like, how do you make a nation take a knee that believes that their leader is a god? Well, what you do is you show them the power of God. How else do you do
That's what it takes, right?
Yeah, you say you're from God, all right. Like, crack your knuckles. Here's the power of God.
Yeah.
God damn. Colonel Tyler Morton, PhD. Thank you for doing this one. Let's definitely do another one.
We will.
Fuck yeah. Choose the next. I'll brush up on it, and hopefully next time I won't be sick. And admittedly, my head is in fog right now. But
we talked about Korea a little bit.
We touched on it. Hey man, accuracy through volume.
I do want to spend an hour talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis at some point.
Fuck yes. No, let's do that next.
I'm going to write an article. I'm trying to line it up with the anniversary, so probably publish it in 22. It's all about manned airborne reconnaissance in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about the U-2, right? But there was so much more going on with, all kinds of stuff that needs to be written about, put out there in one nice piece. So spending an hour talking with you through some of that will help me kind of formulate my ideas.
I would love to
find out what's interesting to you and stuff like that.
I would love to do a Cuban Missile Crisis episode. That would
Yeah.
That would be, I was gonna say, it's kind of like the fire bombings, though. You gotta just generally get close, and you kind of get it. I think that's what you're figuring out about this podcast. You gotta choose a topic, and you'll kind of get near it. It's
fun, man.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's
conversation.
Fuck yeah, man! I appreciate it, and thank you for coming on. And I'll text you after this. Let's definitely set up a Cuban Missile Crisis episode.
All right, brother.
All right, man. Stay safe, stay healthy, don't die from COVID.
Man, I'm going to try not to.
All right, man.
Take care.
Peace. You too, buddy.
Out.